Brains. Brains. Nom 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 nom.
Well, here we are at the end of my Amicus anthology horror review series. It's been great fun going through these films again, and it's been fantastic listening to all the comments that people have made, and getting some good conversations about what I think is just a phenomenal horror franchise. So the final film is 1973's From Beyond the Grave. It was directed by Kevin Connor, who had previously directed films such as At the Earth's Core, and it starred Peter Cushing in the lead role once again as the host, if you like, of the stories that play out throughout the movie. This time the film was not based on EC Comics property, but it was actually based on 4 short stories by famed horror writer R. Chetwynd-Hayes. The music was composed by Douglas Gamley once again, and the cinematography was taken care of by Alan Hume, who had actually done the cinematography for the first entry in the series Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. While Amicus founder Milton Subotsky had previously taken the reins in terms of writing duties with the screenplays of the previous films, this time round we had 2 unknowns at the helm adapting R. Chetwynd-Hayes stories for the big screen. This was taken care of by Raymond Christodoulou and Robin Clark. Now, Raymond Christodoulou, and I have no idea if that's how you pronounce his name, didn't seem to really work again, at least according to IMDb, and Robin Clark is actually listed as the music editor for some pretty impressive films, such as I think Aliens. I think maybe worked in the Superman films as well, and whether it's the same person or not I don't know, because it only has 1 writing credit. It'd be interesting if anyone actually knows the truth behind that. From Beyond the Grave was released in some regions almost as if it was a direct sequel to Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horror. It was renamed in certain places as Tales from Beyond the Grave or Tales from Beyond, which did sit it closely to the previous 2 anthology horror films that Amicus had made. In some places it was also known as The Undead and The Creatures, name I've never really been able to figure out why it was used in this film. In fact, the name The Creatures was actually used as a alternative name for a few horror films, and in pretty much all instances it doesn't really make much sense. As with the previous films in the series, From Beyond the Grave is an anthology horror film. An anthology film is a film that has a wraparound main story which contains several smaller stories and sort of links them together, much like a group of short stories with similar themes. In the case of From Beyond the Grave, the wraparound story consists of a small antique shop which is rather dingy and creepy and out of the way. It's sort of situated underneath this underpass or bridge somewhere in London, and the proprietor of the shop is played by Peter Cushing. Throughout the film, people visit the shop, and when they try to rip off Peter Cushing's character in some way or con him out of the full price for his antiques within the shop, something inevitably terrible happens to them in the end. The wraparound story involving the antique shop is one of my favourite wraparound stories in any anthology horror film. It's fantastically done. The atmosphere of the little shop under the bridge is really sort of creepy, and I think that the way the wraparound concludes is well done, and they didn't sort of cop out with the usual sort of ending to the other that you used to get in the other Amicus anthology horror films. What was quite interesting is there's a few twists and turns that kind of take you by surprise, which is what I really enjoyed. What I really love about the wraparound is the fact that you have Peter Cushing playing the proprietor of the shop. And the reason for that is that, number one, Peter Cushing is just fantastic. He plays the proprietor as this sort of seemingly helpless elderly man, but in a very sort of sinister way. He puts on his wonderful northern English accent, which is very different from his own accent in real life, but it comes across as completely sincere. And it also bookends the series wonderfully, because in the original Amicus anthology horror film Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, the eponymous Dr. Terror was played by Peter Cushing, and in the last Amicus anthology horror film you have Peter Cushing playing the sort of host or central character of the story once again. So it bookends the series nicely, not to mention the fact that with the exception of Vault of Horror, Peter Cushing is in every single entry within the series, so it's really nice to see him sort of go out with a bang. So the first story of the film involves a character called Edward, played by David Warner. He enters Peter Cushing's, or the proprietor's, antique shop and starts to haggle over an old mirror that sits disused at next to a wall within the shop. As they haggle over it, Edward sort of comes across as this quite sort of arrogant fellow, and he's almost kind of trying to like do Peter Cushing's character out of money. In the end, that's exactly what he does. He sort of rips him off to get the mirror, and that starts a chain of events throughout the film where each character somehow does, cons the proprietor of the antique shop, and therefore they're going to have some sort of supernatural experience which revolves around the item that they've taken from the shop. So in this case, Edward takes the mirror back to his flat. He has this little flat in London in the 1970s, and he puts it up above his fireplace, and he's having this party, he's having this get together with his friends, and they decide to hold a seance for a laugh. So they all sit around this table with the mirror sitting in the background, and they have this candle in the middle of the table, and the camera's sort of panning round everyone as they're asking, is anyone there? While this happens, a face appears in the mirror, and it's almost as if the mirror has either trapped someone in it, or it's like a portal to another world, and there's someone on the other side. So you see this face. I think the credits, that's what's referred to actually as the face. And Edward then freaks out during the seance. Everybody leaves the flat, and then the rest of the story is about how Edward becomes obsessed with the character that's in the mirror, and the face in the mirror starts to try to persuade Edward to bring women back to the flat and then murder them, and somehow this will help the character in the mirror, the face in the mirror, until it, as in its own words, it is fulfilled. So that's really the main story without going into too many spoilers. I really love this story. A lot of people feel it's weak because they feel that it is a remake of a story from a 1945 anthology horror film called Dead of Night, which I've talked about in another video before, but I'll do a more in-depth review of that film at some point. There's a story in Dead of Night where a couple buy an antique mirror, and every time the man looks in the mirror he sees another room, not the room that's behind him, and eventually this starts to consume him and drive him mad. But I think, while obviously there are similarities, and it's also been documented that Milton Subotsky, who sort of started up the Amicus anthology horror series, wanted to really he was heavily inspired by Dead of Night, so obviously he's seen this story. However, the thing is, it is based on another writer's short story, so I don't know how much you can kind of say it's a remake of that story from Dead of Night. Yes, there is a mirror. Yes, there is a man that's consumed by it. Yes, he has well, it's not his wife in this, but he has what you assume is his partner, who's trying to sort of find out what's happening to him. But the whole idea about going out and bringing people back to the flat and murdering them as some sort of sacrifice to what's in the mirror, that's a totally different story in my view. And the actual character that's in the mirror, you always see on the other side of the mirror is sort of smoke and fog and strange, luminous lights floating around, and it's I think it's very creepy. And the character is dressed. He's got this black cloak with a red lining in it, and he has these knives attached to him, and you kind of get the feeling, at least in my mind, and I don't want to prejudice you, as you're watching it, but in my interpretation of it was kind of that this guy was Jack the Ripper. That kind of clicked for me, and I think there's too much similarities between the the stereotypical Jack the Ripper outfit that he's wearing, the knives, the fact that he wants this character to bring women back to the flat and all that. That it's at least someone similar to that. But anyway, it's a really enjoyable story. It's got a great conclusion to it. I really enjoy it. I think there's a neighbour character in it as well who's very good. And although it's perhaps aged slightly more than some of the other Amicus stories, that's only because at one point it goes into a nightclub, and obviously that's going to be grounded in the music and styles of the time, and obviously that's going to age it slightly. But you'd be surprised at how little this film has aged in a lot of ways. It's just fantastic. So that's story one. Story two revolves a man called Christopher Lowe, played by Ian Bannon. And this man has a rather tragic life. He lives in a household where his wife, played by Diana Dors, is overbearing. She's a bully. She's really mean to him. And he also has a son who just doesn't respect him at all. He just does not have a happy life. But when you see him walking around outside of his family home, seems like a very pleasant, charming guy. So you kind of feel sorry for him. Now, at the same time, when you're seeing this aspect of his life going on, he starts talking to, I think they used to be called peddlers. I'm not exactly sure, but it's a man played by Donald Pleasence who is standing there, and he's selling matches and shoelaces and things, just little bits and bobs that people might need, outside of like a train station. And Christopher starts talking to the Donald Pleasence character, and it turns out that Donald Pleasence's character was in the military. Now, Ian Bannon then lies about being high up within the military, because this man is all of a sudden giving him respect and saluting him every day when he walks past and all this, and he's just wanting a little bit of respect, a little bit of to feel good about himself. And at one point, the Donald Pleasence character would like to see the medal that Ian Bannon says that he received. So he goes to the antique shop, but when he goes to buy it, the Peter Cushing character says, the proprietor says, no, look, you can't have it. You have to give me proof of ownership that you actually won this medal. As in, you're getting this as a replacement. It's not like you can't just outright buy it, because these have to be only awarded to the people who deserve them. So what does he do? He steals it. Never steal from Peter Cushing. Only bad things are going to happen to you, because he will find you. And he then takes the medal, shows Donald Pleasence, and what happens is eventually Donald Pleasence's character invites Christopher to his house. They go to his house, they have a meal, and this starts becoming a regular thing. And in this house, he's given all the respect in the world that he doesn't get from his real home. Now, Donald Pleasence's character has a daughter who's actually played by Angela Pleasence, who's his real life daughter, and they kind of fall in love. And then there's this sort of story about how they're possibly going to get rid of the wife. I will not ruin any more of it, but that's the story. Now, when I was younger, when I used to watch this film, this was my least favourite story, because I don't think I got it in a lot of ways. But it's interesting because I nearly gave away a spoiler there. That's at the end of the video. Anyway, now when I watch it, I really appreciate it. I think there's a real sort of creepiness to Angela Pleasance's performance in this is really great. She really comes across as really creepy and spooky, I think, and you know, Donald Pleasance is always fantastic. Ian Bannon is quite famous. Well, he's famous here as a Scottish actor. He's fantastic. Diana Dors is amazing as the overbearing wife, and it's probably the story where you have the most amount of sympathy for the character who's ripped off the antique store. He's the character that you do feel the most sympathy for. But I do like the second story. I don't think it's the strongest story in the film, but I think it's individual in a lot of ways. It's not, well, it does have a supernatural aspect to it, but it doesn't feel as overt as the other stories, and but it's thoroughly enjoyable. The third story revolves around the character called Reggie Warren, who is played by Ian Carmichael, who's an actor that you used to see in a lot of films of this time, always playing very amiable, likeable characters. And in this story, what he does, he goes into the antique shop and he wants to buy a snuff box, but it's too expensive. So what he does is he swaps the price tags from a lesser expensive snuff box to it, and then buys it. So he's still conning Peter Cushing's character. After this, at some point, he's on a train, and when he's on the train, he is sharing a cabin with this woman called Madame Orloff, which I always quite liked because it's like Count Orloff from Nosferatu. And she is this sort of medium. Now, he doesn't know her, she's a stranger to him, and he's been having, like, feeling pains in his shoulder. Now, she says to him, "You've got an elemental on your shoulder," and she says, you know, it's a nasty one, you know, there's this sort of like creature that you can't see, or this spirit which has attached itself to you, and it's like draining the life out of you. And of course he thinks it's a lot of nonsense, but she gives him her card, and he then goes home, and once he goes home, he then sort of tries to go on about his day. But then one night he's sleeping with, you know, his wife, sleeping next to his wife, and she actually starts to feel like he's attacking her, but you know, he's not attacking her. It's this thing on his shoulder, this creature, whatever it is. So it's all about that sort of situation, and then he contacts Madame Orloff to try and get rid of it. So that's as far as I'll go with that. This story is interesting because, as much as I said that the first one didn't try to mimic Dead of Night, in my opinion, really, I think this story does, and I think it's more in the tone than anything else. I think it's the most thoroughly English story probably of the Amicus series, and it really does feel like one of the stories. It feels like a story that could have been in the 1945 film Dead of Night. Just the tone is very much the same. I think in some ways this film is supposed to be the comical story of the piece, but what I really like about this story is that I think it gets the comedy, and then it sort of hits you with the creepiness towards the end of it, and I think it works. The third story isn't the strongest in the film, but you know, it is really enjoyable, and the performances are absolutely fantastic, with Ian Carmichael always being the likeable lead, and Margaret Leighton being absolutely fantastic as Madame Orloff, this sort of eccentric. Reminded me of the Margaret Rutherford version of Miss Marple in the sort of like 50s. She's sort of that sort of eccentric character. But yeah, not the best story in the film, but still very enjoyable. Story number 4 is my favourite in this film, and it is also one of my favourite stories in any anthology horror film. It involves a character called William Seaton, who is played by is it Ian Ogilvy. So this guy is sort of a younger guy, maybe in his sort of mid to late 20s. He goes into the antique shop and he finds this, you know, beautiful old door. It's huge, you know, it's huge, sort of imposing door. I say it's beautiful, it's actually kind of creepy, but you know, it's this sort of imposing, authentic antique door. Peter Cushing then asks, asks for the amount of money, and William sort of, after he's given him the money, Peter Cushing leaves the till unattended, and I'm sure you can guess what happens then. But he takes the door, and the story is about how he puts the door up on its hinges, and at 12 o'clock at night, or at a certain time during the day, when you open that door, it's supposed to just go into a cupboard, but what actually happens is a room appears inside, and it's this really sort of blue tinted room, and it's covered in hundreds of years of cobwebs, and it's obviously from the past, and it's very creepy. And the story is about the backstory of the room, and is there someone in there? So that's as far as I'll go. Love this story. The backstory is fantastic. Payoff is brilliant, and I enjoyed the effects in it. I really enjoyed the performances. The only criticism of it would be that door kind of looked a bit strange in terms of like putting it on your cupboard, like just this little cupboard, it's like a big ornate door. You think you would buy it and you put it on like your front door, or a door to the master bedroom or something like that. That's honestly the only criticism. It's not really much of a criticism, but I just love this story. I think it's the best of the film, one of my favourites on any anthology horror film, and just excellent. It's got a fantastic conclusion to it, but the whole room in there and what's in there, very creepy, and yeah, just thoroughly enjoyable. So in conclusion, I love From Beyond the Grave. I think, as much as I said at the beginning of this review series, all those weeks and weeks ago when we started this, I love Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. I said that it was my favourite, but really I have to say I think it's joint favourite with From Beyond the Grave. And when I look at it, sometimes I think that, as much as I do really rate Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, that a lot of that is nostalgia, and the other side of it with From Beyond the Grave is that, it's probably just that it's really engrossing. I think it's got one of the best wraparounds. Peter Cushing's just fantastic in it. All the performances are fantastic in this. I don't think there's a weak story, I think obviously you can pick one as the weakest out of the lot, but they're all really strong. I think the atmosphere of the film's great. I think this one managed to be creepy and dark without being as grim as, for example, Tales from the Crypt. There's nothing as heartbreaking as the Peter Cushing story within Tales from the Crypt. That's probably the only thing that's lacking, but then it still has, I think, the story with Ian Bannon, where he steals the medal. That character is quite heartbreaking, I think. So I think that they kind of tried to do that with that character, and yeah, just absolutely watch this film. It's phenomenal. I can't really say much more about it in terms of that. So we're going to go on to the spoilers section of the video now. So if you haven't watched it, go away, watch it, and then come back and watch the rest of this video. Okay, so major spoilers, and you have been warned. With regards to the wraparound, obviously he's kind of like the devil, and the antique shop's called Temptations Limited, and I think that really that Peter Cushing plays it brilliantly in terms of he's got that vulnerability, and that could also be used to sort of reel people in, and then also just you feel that he is a malign entity as well deep down. I love the conclusion of it. I love the fact that throughout the film you keep seeing this guy wanting to go into the shop, and then he walks away again. It turns out at the end he's trying to rob the shop, and then what happens to him. I love the fact that once again we have the character talking to the camera, which became a staple of the Amicus series. When the Amicus anthology horror film would finish, the character would sort of address the audience directly. And yeah, I'm just blown away by the fact that this was Amicus's last proper full anthology horror film. And you know, it's very sad, but you know, they went out with possibly the best one. It's not rated as highly by a lot of people as like The House of Drip Blood, or Tales from the Crypt, but I think this is better than both of those films, and I love both of those films, but I think this one is better. From Beyond the Grave is just really, really class. One last thing about the proprietor and the antique shop is that there seems to be a close relation to the Stephen King story and film Needful Things, which involves a character that's kind of inferred might be the devil in an antique shop. So I often wonder if there was something in that there with regards to maybe Stephen King had seen this film. I don't know, but it does like feel like a sort of similar thing. The first story with David Warner playing the character with the mirror, I think there's a lot more to that story than a cheap rip-off of Dead of Night. I really do think that. I think that the character in the mirror is really creepy, and I think the whole thing when the character says that I have been to the ultimate, you know, what the hell is ultimate? I don't know, that's wherever he's been, and he says, you know, we are legion, we sit in high places, which, you know, when he comes out of the mirror, when he gets out of the mirror, because David Warner's character has killed enough people to bring him out of the mirror, and then David Warner has to go back there, and then it starts all over again when someone has a seance in the room and you see him sort of appear at the mirror. It's certainly the bloodiest, I think, of the stories. I sort of wince every time I see the bit where David Warner's character sort of pushes himself onto the knife held by the thing in the mirror. But like I said before, I certainly think that he's Jack the Ripper or that type of character, and he says that he gave his sacrifices, so he's obviously killed. There was obviously someone in the mirror before him, and you just wonder, you know, that's what I love about it, is that the imagination is there as to, you know, what's the ultimate, what is, you know, is that what he's talking about, you know, on the other side of the mirror, you know, what is that, who was in the mirror before, is there anyone else there, is there anything else there, or is he trapped in there on his own? I also think that the way that David Warner plays the lead character, it's almost as if the mirror reflects what he is, because while I don't think he's a murderer, because you see him really at odds with doing that, I think it's quite clear that he was already slightly corrupted as an individual, and the mirror just sort of took advantage of that. I loved the character with the neighbour, and let's say it was pretty bloody in that apartment, you know, and the girl underneath the floorboards and all that. All of that was really quite bloody, you know, especially for an Amicus film, and I think certainly in From Beyond the Grave. The second story, like I said earlier, it was probably the story I enjoyed least as a child, and I think the reason for that was just that it didn't intrigue me as much as a kid. It does now. The second story was the one with Donald Pleasance, and you know, the twist ending with the fact that not only do, you know, Donald Pleasance and Donald Pleasance's daughter kill Christopher, the main character, but they also, you know, kill the wife, they also kill Christopher, and then it turns out that it's the boy who's sort of brought this about. It's the child actually wished this and wanted both of them dead. So and there's obviously like a sort of magical aspect to it, a supernatural aspect to it, you know, almost sort of voodoo thing where when they have like a doll of someone, whatever they do to that, it happens to the person. And you know, despite that, I still think it's really quite heartbreaking what happens to Christopher, because you just feel sorry for him. He's a sort of sad, lonely figure. What's interesting about the story is that it's probably the closest to like EC comic stories in terms that they tied it into the child, you know, and that was later done as well in things like Twilight Zone the movie, Creepshow as well did it. In fact, Creepshow even had the whole voodoo doll idea as well. But I do enjoy the second film, and you have to ask yourself, you know, what are they? You know, where did they come from? How did the boy contact them? They sort of say that wishes do come true, so was it just a wish that he made and somehow magically these people came into existence to kind of kill his parents? I don't know, but you know, still a good story. The thing I like about the third story is that the Ian Carmichael character he's likeable, but then at the end of the story, because you get that likability to him, you do feel for him at the end. But the whole twist with the wife being possessed by this creature, I really enjoyed that, and I think that was genuinely creepy at the end. It's kind of a little bit campy and kitsch, you know, when the way she sort of breaks down the door and wanders out, you know, a bit like Frankenstein's monster. But you know, I think it was a good ending to a story that up until that point had been quite kind of funny. But the idea of the elemental, this unknown quantity, this thing that you can't see, it's sort of attached to you and draining your life force. I think that is quite an eerie thought. But apart from that, there's not much more to add. It is a good story. Again, it's not the best in the film though. And lastly, on to the fourth story. Like I said before, my favourite of the film. I think the whole backstory to the room is fantastically done. You know, the idea that this guy sort of made the door out of flesh and blood and sacrifice, and the door would like keep him immortal because he would be in this room, and occasionally would have to venture out of the door and like take people into the room and sacrifice them because that was what was needed to keep the room going. And I love the effects when the hero's sort of putting the axe and then his partner's putting the axe into the door, and it's, you know, the blood's coming out of it, and the guy that inhabits the room, the Cavalier, well, he looks like a cavalier, looks like he's from sort of King Charles I or II, that sort of period in England. That's kind of what he looks like. And I thought he was quite menacing, and you know, I mean, when he's standing there holding the girlfriend, sort of looking at the guy and sort of slowly edging into the door, and then he just sort of says, "Come, two are better than one," you know, and it's like really quite frightening. This story scared me genuinely as a child. I mean, it's not that frightening now. So one of the things that freaked me out is the door, you know, like the other door in the room, you know, there must be other rooms. Where does that go to? I don't know. But I love the whole thing crumbling down, and it's just, you know, as they're hitting the door, and it's fantastic. And I love the twist that in the end the guy was a good guy, so he survived. I love that, you know. Love the fact that all the other people actually ripped off Peter Cushing's character, and then you find out in the end, once that scene ends, that he didn't. He actually, you know, Peter Cushing's counting the money in the till, and it's all present. So I think that's fantastic. I can't say any more about this story. It's just wonderful. The only criticism, like I said, the door on the cupboard, and also the fact that all of a sudden a brand new door appears on the cupboard. It's kind of weird. But that's obviously just so they could have the effect of closing the door and then opening it again, nothing being there. But other than that, yeah, this is just a phenomenal story. So that's it. That's the end of Amicus anthology review films for myself, and I've loved doing it. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you have watched all of these, or even one of them to the end, thank you very, very much. I know I can go on a little bit, I can repeat myself a little bit, but I'm trying to correct that within the reviews as I go, especially as I edit them. Love this, and up next I'm going to do for one of my favourite subscribers on here, Brady. I'm going to be doing 2001 Space Odyssey and 2010 Odyssey 2, so that's like a double bill. And I'm also going to be doing at the same time a Fright Night review series, so Fright Night Part 1, Part 2 and the remake. So that should be 5 films before October, and then when 31 Horrors of Mike, or whatever I decide to call it, kicks in on October, when I'll be reviewing a film every day up until Halloween night. So that's what we've got in store for us. Thank you very much for watching my Amicus Anthology Horror Review series, and take care. I hope you enjoyed it.